Facebook family. It is lovely to be sat down with you guys again today on Friday the 13th, coming up in the run up to Christmas. For anybody that doesn't know me, I am Sally Tarbox. I'm the proud owner of this podcast and YouTube channel, The Conscious Female Founder. I am also an international best-selling author. I've appeared on Fox TV, and I am the proud owner of the brand, The Empowerment Movement, where I coach other entrepreneurs on how to increase their income streams through their business through passive income. And I'm also the proud owner of the very first business I ever owned, How Natural, which is a completely natural pet brand. But today I'm super excited and honored to be sat down with Jessie. Jessie is a breathwork and wellness coach, and I think probably so prominent at this time of year when everybody is rushing around manically in the preparations for Christmas and the end of the year. I know people that are in corporate jobs, it can be a really stressful time of year where you're trying to wind down towards the end of the year, but also for mums as they're prepping for home life and family, and everybody wanting to get out and see themselves. But I will take this opportunity. Jessie, thank you so much for joining me today. It is lovely to be sat with you. I am really, really honoured and really, really grateful. But I'll let you introduce yourself, because you've got quite a story of how you kind of came here and how you got to be this breathwork coach, and how you're helping people all over the world now, aren't you? And you're public speaking as well. So I'll let you introduce yourself and maybe give us a bit of a backstory of like where you came from.
Amazing. Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you.
And yeah, well, so as you mentioned, I'm a breathwork and wellness expert, and I work with people to better understand how their breathing directly affects how they live their life and how they show up in the world. So if you can change the way you breathe, you can change your life. So that's essentially what I do. We'll go a lot deeper into that, but
Yes,
I
please.
haven't always done this. So I don't know if you want me to share my story about how I found breathwork.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Because I think it's really inspirational where how like the journey that you've kind of been on to get to this point.
Yeah, so I haven't always done this. My background is in the corporate world. So I've worked in recruitment and HR for nearly 15 years. And I did that out in Australia and the UK. And it's coming on to almost a decade ago. So almost 10 years
Wow.
ago yeah, where I hit that, unfortunately, all well-known burnout
Mm,
in corporate, where the role I was in was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I didn't have the tools to cope with the stress.
yeah.
So it started to really impact me negatively. So I wasn't sleeping well, I wasn't eating well. I had all the bad coping habits like drinking
Mm,
too much, eating badly, all of
yeah.
that. My exercise stopped, all my relationships suffered. I
Yeah.
wasn't sleeping. So in turn, it started to impact my work as well. And I was like, this is not okay. I was
Mm,
so miserable. But I knew basically from 2 weeks into that job it wasn't for me, but I stayed
mm.
for 2 years because
Yeah.
it ticks all the boxes, right? It's
Yeah.
prestigious, lots of money, it's what I should be doing.
Yeah, the
Um,
shoulds.
right? This is the next step. This is
Yeah.
where I should be going with my life. But when I made the decision to leave, I was like, well, what do I do now? Do I just take time out and go back into another corporate job? And I was like, I don't know, and I don't want to rush into it. So I took a period of time out and decided I needed to be overseas. And I don't know if you've ever had a calling or a place
Yes.
call you from your heart. And I was
Yeah.
like, I need to go to Brazil. I need to be in Rio. And
Yeah.
so, yes, right.
I love it when that
Holidays.
happens, because you don't know why you're being like called to go to that place, do you, at all? And you can only add the dots up afterwards. Yeah.
Right. This is what's so cool. And I was like, well, I want to have a purpose while I'm there. I'm not just going to go and hang out, even though that's cool. But I decided to work on a social enterprise project for 2 months. So I moved out to Rio. And it was during those 2 months that I started to live life again. Like I
Yeah.
was going to the beach, I was, being more social. I started to do things that I love to do. And I realized that I hadn't been living life. I'd just
Yeah.
been existing.
Yeah.
You go to work, you go home, you go to work, you go home. I didn't have a social life. I was just existing. So I was like, I'm not going to go back into that. Something's got to change.
Yeah.
So I decided to retrain as a coach. And because this was all online study, I decided to stay in Brazil and do that. So I literally decided to stay put in Rio. It's a beautiful place.
Amazing.
And it's what I needed for my soul. And when I started on this coaching journey, I connected with another coach who just certified in breathwork. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like,
Yeah, because
yeah.
I was about to ask the question, like, what is this? Yeah,
Right? She's like, I teach people how to breathe. And I'm like, hang on, we're already
we're all
breathing.
doing that.
Right. So
Yeah.
what is this all about? And she talked to me about it and she's like, come along to my workshop. And so I went along and I missed the whole intro, but during the session, we were doing this conscious connected breath work. There was acupressure being done on my body. We were making sound, we were using movement, and there was loads of things happening. And at the end of the session, like there was people crying and releasing lots of emotions.
Yeah.
And at the end, we had this time of stillness and integration. And I felt this sense of peace and stillness that I'd never felt before,
It's
or it'd
incredible.
been a long time, right? And I was
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
whoa. I was like, how can I feel like this just from breathing? I
That's
was like,
mad.
this is cool. So I was like, tell me more, tell me more. So I started going along to these sessions. And every time I would do this breath work, I'd start to release emotions. Like
Mm.
I'd just be crying and not know why,
Yeah.
and then I'd start to feel better. And I was like, there's something to this. Like, what is going on here?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty cool. So I went on a 6-day seminar, and they call it like a personal seminar. It's like an introduction to breath work. And we do 2 of these breathing sessions a day. And when we were there, like it was on the 4th day, I still remember it so clearly. I had the biggest emotional breakthrough,
Yeah.
and I was crying and sobbing and releasing a trauma from my body that I'd
Mm.
experienced from my childhood. So when I was
Yeah.
16, we had a fire in the house. We lost my dad, he died. And at the time, you deal with it in a very cognitive way.
Yes, definitely
Yeah.
that age as well, I would have said, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like you have therapies and you move through it and you're like, okay, this is a life-changing moment. You
Yeah, of
move on with
course.
life. But I had no idea I'd stored it in my body on like a
Yeah.
cellular level.
Yeah.
And this is what came out nearly 20 years later. And I was
Yeah.
like, I can't believe that was still there.
Yeah.
And what I realized is that that was running in my unconscious, and I was
Yeah.
carrying it unconsciously. It was shaping all of my decisions, and it was still
Yeah.
impacting my life. So, decisions I'd made in my life since that event, I'd decided to move to university the furthest away from home.
Mm.
When I moved back from university, I moved out to Australia, which was the furthest away from home.
Yeah.
So unconsciously, it's like I'm running away from this.
Yeah.
I had a really unhealthy relationship with alcohol because I
Yeah.
was trying to numb that trauma that was
Yeah.
there. I had a lot of things happening, and I was like, oh my goodness, when this came out on the breathwork session, like this released, it was like my whole body just like let go. I felt
Wow.
myself like come back into alignment
Yeah.
and like connect with myself. Like I felt grounded and I felt clear. And I was like, oh my God, this
My
is how
goodness.
I'm supposed to feel. Like this is who I am. And I was like, I have to share this breath work. It
I
was
love
in
that.
that moment, I was like, I have to share. People need access to this. People need
Yes.
to breathe.
Yeah.
And then I decided in that moment to train because I had no intention of doing this.
Yeah.
Honestly, Sally, I was like,
Yes.
this is
I
just cool.
love
I'm doing it for
that.
myself. And so I was like, right, okay, it's had a massive impact on me. So I trained in Brazil and Mexico and the US and the UK. Like 12 months later, I did all my training, and I've been based back in London doing this full time since then. So it has helped me on so many levels. Like that helped me to heal a massive trauma. So that was, before I decided to do the training, but it helps me day to day. It still supports me
Yeah.
now. Like it
Yeah.
supported me through lockdown, it supports me through life challenges. And, we're challenged all the time,
Oh, we are.
aren't we?
We really are.
Yeah.
Literally, well, I literally just told you a story before we jumped on that my wardrobe door just fell off, and I was like, oh, okay. Wasn't expecting that right now, but we'll just put that back here. So it is, we're constantly challenged. Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I used to be that person, like for your example there, wardrobe door falling off, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to be late. I've got to jump on. I've got to do
Yeah.
this. Panic mode, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But now, like you said, you're like, oh, okay, I'll deal
Okay.
with this in a minute. We'll just approach this. So it's helped me to almost be able to respond to situations better because I would very much be that reactive person before. And
Yes.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, this is the end of the world. Like the smallest thing would
Yeah.
trigger a massive emotional response. And it's like that pressure cooker effect
Yeah.
because we store so many things in the body throughout our
Absolutely.
life.
Yeah.
And then it builds up and it builds up and it builds up. Then it's like an explosion of emotion that comes
Yeah.
out. Oh,
Yeah.
I might have been an overreaction, but that's what's happened.
But the
And
thing is, if they're always there and they keep building up and we're not doing these things to release them, then yeah, I can absolutely see why so many people get to a point where it's like, and I'm guessing as well that can be through illness as well, where people become really quite ill because I have very much have a belief that like disease is like dis-ease within the body. And if it sits there for too long, then it's gonna come out somehow, like if it's not meant to be there. But I think it's so
100%.
interesting. You said that obviously, yeah, you had this trauma trapped in your body and you thought you'd processed it, but obviously you hadn't. But I think that is so true for pretty much everybody. Obviously, yours was a big, big trauma, but trauma can look like quite a different to lots of different people, and yet we still hold on to it. And you can kind of think, oh yeah, I've processed that, or whatever that might have been, but actually it's still sitting there. And it's only when you get to this point where you work with someone like yourself and then it starts to come out and you're like, oh my God, I feel really different.
Yeah, and you really do. And it is those things that maybe you don't even expect.
Yeah,
It could be like a conversation you had with someone that really upset you, but it stayed with you because you've like held on to it. It could have been something that happened when you were a child. You got
yeah,
laughed at in class for saying
yeah,
something,
yeah,
kind of shuts down your expression so you don't speak freely anymore.
yeah,
We hold on to these things throughout our life that we don't realize that they're there until we can start to access the unconscious and let it go. But the cool thing is that we can release it if we
yeah,
are ready to and we work with it. So I don't know
yes,
if you've ever heard the saying, your issues are in your tissues.
yes,
Yeah. So I
yes.
love that. When I first heard that, I was like, oh my God, it's so true
It's so
because
true though, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah. And it's almost like,
literally.
and it's a sense of getting it out. Because once it's out, then it's like, oh, okay. But it's that subconscious unknowing of like of it being trapped so
Mm,
deep. And obviously then working, yeah, with someone like yourself to get that out. So
yeah,
how do you so obviously you're breathwork coach now, and I know you obviously public speak as well, and you work with a massive entity of people, don't you? Like, and
I
I think
do.
this is fantastic. And this is why I was so like, I have to speak to you today. Because it is obviously, yeah, I guess like the run up for Christmas and things, and people are stressed out. And I love Friday the 13th, to be honest with you, because I'm quite a spiritual person. But so who do you kind of work with and how do you do that now?
So I work with anyone who is ready to connect to themselves and their breath. And it's not just people that feel like they're stressed or anxious or have traumas. It's people that also want to improve their lives or, they're feeling like there's something missing. They're not quite satisfied in life. They might be really successful in one area or two areas of life, but then there's something that's missing.
Mm,
So I work with people across the spectrum and we can work one to one where you get that dedicated support and I'll give you the breathing analysis and we get coached through everything that's going on.
yeah.
But I also support people in groups. I've got my online courses and I work with corporates, which is great because that's
That's
what I'm getting on.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
So
must be like, because when I saw you did that, I was like, that's almost like you've gone full circle. And I
yeah,
love that. So it's
yeah.
almost like you're going back and I guess helping the people who were you all that time ago.
Literally. And that's what's so important to me because I really feel that if I'd had access to what I do now back then,
Mm,
it may have been a very different story for me.
yeah.
So when I first left corporate, I'd call myself a corporate escapee. Got away, I got away. But
Mm,
I don't believe that now because I don't feel like you have to escape corporate. I think it's
no.
just about being able to thrive in that environment and
Yeah.
having the tools to be able to do that. So that's what I really love, being able to support people in that environment
Yeah.
to be able to support themselves. That's essentially what it
Yeah.
is because I empower people to
Yes.
take control back of their lives.
Mm,
Because it's like we've just lost ourselves somewhere along the way. So it's
mm,
like, okay, let's just go into that a little bit and find that again and then really anchor into what can support us day to day.
yeah.
So I love that corporates are open to it and
I think that's
but
brilliant.
yeah, I do a lot of like big sessions with them and just share like the more functional breath work that can help you day to day.
Yeah.
And then let them know that the deeper stuff is available when they're ready
Of
because
course, right?
yeah, they
Yeah,
can
because
come through
everybody,
that.
I think everybody's at a different place, isn't it? And it's almost like you said, like sometimes you don't actually know when you have lost yourself, if that makes sense, until like you get to a point and you can almost be standing in front of a mirror and be like, I actually don't know who I am anymore. Like I don't,
Yeah,
how did I get here?
yeah,
So and I don't think, well, to me that's not a shameful thing because I've definitely been in those situations where I've got
yeah,
to points and I've been like, I actually don't know who I am. I don't really know what I like. I don't really know if I want to be here. And then when I say here, I mean as in like live in this particular area or do this particular thing. Or so I think a lot of people find themselves in that situation. So I think it's absolutely incredible that then you can guide people through that process of wherever they might be, to being like, okay, let's just go back and find you again.
Mm,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right, because I think most of us get to that point because life happens
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
get swept up in it,
Yeah.
and we just keep going, and then time is moving and we're just getting through each day at a time, and that's
Yeah.
okay. But when we get to the point we recognize it and you're like, okay, something's going to change today. I
Yeah.
need something to change. You have to get to that point to be ready to
Yeah.
make that decision, and then the whole world opens up, because then you can start delving into that. And the first part I always say is accepting where you are, because like
Yes.
you said, I'm so glad you said there's no shame in it, because that's the first thing we tend to feel. We feel
Yes, it is,
shameful,
isn't
we
it?
feel
Yeah.
guilty. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, how did I get here? How did I get there? And we put a lot of pressure on ourselves and we judge
Mm.
ourselves a lot. And it's like,
Yeah.
stop, 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 please,
Yeah.
because
Yes.
we're
Yeah.
all in the same boat. We all go through stuff,
Yes.
right? It's just
Yeah.
different levels at different times.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I
yeah.
completely agree with that. Yeah, we do, don't we? We put so much pressure on ourselves, and then when we do, if and when we do get to that point where we feel lost, it's almost then we start judging ourselves and shaming ourselves. And actually, that's almost a time or a period where we need to be the most loving on ourselves, to be like, this is
Yeah.
okay. Like this is actually okay to feel like this. But I think it's almost a societal thing where I guess, like you said, like everybody goes to work, we eat, we sleep, we go to work, we and you're on that sort of race, and then you find yourself in this situation, and then it's almost like you can feel this, I guess, unspoken judgment from this society box that we've all kind of meant to be fitting into. And that's when then we almost end up judging ourselves, and it's like, hang on a minute, no, this is okay. And actually, I think the thing to really highlight there is that so many people probably feel exactly the same way,
Yeah.
but just don't express it, but then don't do anything about it. And I think it takes an incredible person to sit there and go, okay, this isn't okay. What do I need to do? Like, to actually work out who I am, what I want. And that's obviously then when you come into play. So
Yeah.
I think what you're doing is absolutely incredible. It is. And I love, love, love the fact that you said a minute ago, the fact that you obviously went on this journey and you did this, and your first thought was like, I need to share this. Like,
Yeah.
this is like some mad secret and I need to share it. And it's almost like I feel like that's where the passion of, like, because you've obviously you've gone down the road, you've walked the road. It's not like someone just be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go and try this. Like, you've walked the path, you've done the corporate rat race and all those kinds of things. And like you said, being very reactive, not really knowing why. You've had obviously the massive trauma in your life. And then to kind of come full circle and get to that almost like that light bulb moment of being like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I love the fact that you're now sharing it and obviously helping so many people along the way.
Mm.
It's
Yeah, it really, I really do feel passionate about it, because it's something
yeah,
that we could all access and we
yes,
all have access to.
yeah,
Um, and it's, you talk about us being in that turning point where we're like, okay, something needs to change. And you said, that's when we need to be kind and loving to ourselves, because that's the opening of
yeah,
like the next level. It's like sometimes we have to get to that point to then break through, to up level, to
yeah,
blossom into
yeah,
like what we're meant to be doing or who we're meant to be. And it's
yeah,
all a part of us. It's accepting the journey, not judging it. And
yes,
I'm really honored that people put their trust in me with that as well, because it's really powerful. Like, you can
yeah.
work with your breath in so many different ways, but it will change your life,
And
like
I
however
think
you
that's,
start.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the really magical part, is like it will change your life. And yet it's something we all do, but actually probably a lot of us abuse it if you don't know about breath work. And that's not from a judgment perspective. That's like, if you don't know, you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. So
Of
that's
course.
why I love what you do so much, because you're shining a light on something actually that is available to everybody, with obviously the guidance and coaching of someone like yourself. And that's
Yeah.
where it's like, and yet that can change your life. Like, that's
Yeah.
huge. That is absolutely
Yeah.
magical.
I
Go.
love how passionate you are about it as well. It makes me
It's because I
smile.
love breath work. I've done
Yeah.
a lot of breath work sessions, and so I've like experienced it myself, and it's
Mm.
I like, it's almost like there's no words to kind of put on how incredible it is. And I remember
Yeah.
quite a few years ago when I started it, a coach of mine said, "Oh, we're going to do some breath work sessions," and I was a bit like, what is this? Like,
Yeah.
what? And I did kind of go in with that concept, and she was kind of like, just go with me, let's just start. And I remember after the first few sessions of her kind of incorporating them into my private coaching, I was just like, whoa, this, and like you said, I can remember bursting into tears and not really understanding why. And then afterwards, almost like apologizing to her. And she was like, no, like, this is good. This is good. This is coming out. This is stuff. This is stuck. So the fact that this is coming out, this is a really good sign. And then when you kind of get to that point, you're like, oh, okay. Well, what else is here that needs to come out?
Yeah.
And that's when you
Yeah.
can go on a real journey with yourself. And it is. And what you said is so true. Like, you can use it every single day when you understand like the techniques. Obviously you're the expert in this, but you can incorporate it into those moments, almost like I sometimes use it a little bit like a grounding technique,
Yeah.
like where I
100%.
can, when I can feel myself, like you said, it's bubbling up, it's rising up. There's a lot of, we're still human, right? There's a lot of things that are coming at us from all different directions. So when I can feel it coming up, I have a few techniques that I use to go and ground myself, just to bring myself back to a place of center. And breath work is one of them. So like sometimes I'll just go off to the bathroom downstairs and be like, I just need to concentrate on the breath for a second. And it can only be a few minutes, and then I'm like, okay, okay.
I
So
love
I
that you
think
do that, Sally. And I love that you just said it can just be a few minutes. That's all
it
it
can
takes
be.
to
Yeah,
really
yeah,
just shift it,
yeah.
because we are like, we control our emotions with our breath and vice versa.
Yeah,
Right? So it's like we're holding all of that in with our breath and we can store it in our body. So, we have an emotional experience and we suppress it. There's a
yeah,
physical response sometimes and we hold our breath and we control it.
yeah,
And if we do that over a lifetime, it could be when we're feeling sad and we don't want to express it, or when we're angry and we don't want to express it, or when we get scared and we hold it all in. So when we start to consciously work with the breath, we start to release those pockets of tension. That's what's
yeah.
happening. So that's why the emotion's coming out. And so when you said, you would be releasing emotions, you're like, I don't know why. And you don't need to know why, because it's just
Right.
been stored in the body. Like you said, it's blocked
Yeah,
somewhere. So if you can just allow it to go through, and I think it's really important to acknowledge it's important to allow that emotion to come out as well,
yes,
because sometimes it can be quite overwhelming. And when we have this experience and that emotion is coming up, the automatic response might be, yep, this is
oh,
really uncomfortable. I'm going to
yeah,
shove that
yeah.
right back in
I'm
where
gonna
it
put it
came
back up
from.
again. Yeah, yeah. I think the automatic response is to do that, isn't it? It's like, oh, I don't like that. And it's like, no, actually, this needs to carry on. And I know it's hard, but it needs to come out. That's why, yeah,
So that's why I say anyone that comes to work with me, anyone that chooses to work with their breath, and it takes courage. You're warriors, really are warriors, because you're choosing to make that change. You're choosing to invest in yourself. You're choosing the transformation and to heal. So, I
yeah,
think to give yourself credit if you are on the breathwork path as well.
yeah, definitely. Because I think it's really interesting as well. Because it is like I said, we're still human, right? And there's there's I don't know, I guess there's temptation everywhere, in the sense of, yes, like when you can feel like you're having a stressful day, and I know I'm being triggered from, and it can be any, like lots of different things. It's very easy to revert back to old habits, like you said, like drinking too much, probably snapping at somebody, probably like, oh, or going and eating something that I know I shouldn't eat. Or it's really easy to step back into those habits, but actually, unfortunately, and I think this is where I've definitely got it wrong in the past, where it's easy to do that. It's not as easy to kind of step away and be like, well, it is and it isn't. Do you know what I mean? I don't know whether I'm getting my point across right here. What I'm trying to say is, it's easy to go and take a bottle of wine out the fridge and be like, oh, right, okay, I've had a stressful day. But actually working through the things that, through breath work, the things that have happened through my day, and releasing the tension that way, then I feel like that's something completely different. And that's why I love it so much. And that's why, for me, I can only go and do it for a couple of minutes, and then I'm like, okay,
Yeah, but that's where you get
feel
the growth.
so much better.
Yeah. That's where you get the growth. That's where you get the transformation, because you're breaking those patterns. They're
Yeah,
just patterns. They're just stories that have been running in there the
yeah,
whole time in your own unconscious. And the thing is not to judge that either,
yeah,
because those patterns or those beliefs that we've got have been in place to keep us safe
yeah,
or to help us for a period of time. But then it gets to the point where we don't need those anymore. So we,
yeah,
we just want to reprogram those and let those go. So, I said I had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol because I would drink to get drunk. I was
yeah,
numbing my emotions, and I
yeah,
would do exactly that. I've had a crap day, so I'm going to go and drink some wine and,
yeah,
feel
Yeah.
better from it. But you never feel better from it. It
No,
might
you
provide
don't. That's the thing. Yeah.
temporary relief. You get that dopamine hit for a second, but then, you spiral down again. So will always, approach myself with kindness. And
Yeah.
if that thought like would come up again, what I would do is check in with myself and say, am I wanting to have a drink
Mm.
because I'm looking to numb an emotion, or I'm feeling
Yeah.
emotionally
Express
charged
something. Mm.
and that's why I'm reaching for a drink? Or am I going to have a drink because I want to be social, I might want to
Yeah.
enjoy it, and I want a
Yeah.
glass of wine?
Yeah, of
Just check in
course,
with
right?
yourself and what's your intention behind that? Because then if you can catch yourself in that moment and ask yourself, and then do, like you said, practice and breath work, do a bit of movement, go
Mhm.
into that, release it. That's when you start reprogramming and breaking those patterns. And that's when you
Yeah.
start to evolve in yourself. So it's just a gentle process, just gently, gently, softly, softly. And
Absolutely. And I love that you said that because I think a lot of the time I kind of when I talk to clients or I do things like this and we're talking about mindset and how we think and why we think that way, it is a gentle process. And I liken it a little bit sometimes to like going to the gym. Like you can go to the gym once and be like, right, I'm gonna have a great workout, and you have a great workout, and you walk out and you're like, okay, feel great. Why have I not got a six pack?
yeah, I use the same example.
Yeah, it is true, right?
Yeah.
It's so true. And then you're like, oh well, and then you go a couple more times, you're like, oh, I still got a six pack, I haven't lost weight. So I'm gonna give this up. And actually, obviously, people know the more they go, the healthier they get, the fitter they get, the better they feel about themselves. And I like on mindset work, and obviously what you're doing with the same concept. Yes, it's gently, slowly, but it's that repeated behavior. And when the repeated behavior then comes into effect, then we start seeing the changes. And then when we start seeing the changes, you almost want to do a little bit more. And then things start changing around you. And it's like that, isn't it? It's and that's how I kind of think about breath work and mindset work and coaching and things like that. Yeah, once you start doing it, but you're repeatedly doing, then that's when the reprogramming comes into place as well.
100%. And that's how I work with people as well. That's how I encourage it. So, one to one, we've got programs that we work on together. I've got a 21-day program to work through because you can try something once and have an experience. You could do one breathwork session, have an
Yeah,
incredible experience, which will be great and you'll definitely benefit. But it's the consistent
yeah,
practice that will give you the transformation. And it's
yeah,
being consistent with it and staying with it. So exactly like you said,
yeah.
staying with it a little bit at a time. And that's why I will encourage people to choose a practice. So if it's just a day-to-day functional breathing exercise you want to practice,
Mm.
choose the one you like the most and just practice that one for a few minutes a
Yeah,
day, and you will feel a difference.
yeah.
So it's the little changes.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? It's the little changes actually that once you, it's almost like the compound effect. Once they start coming into play, you do it a little bit more, then the big changes then become really prominent. Because
Mm.
equally as well, we can go the other way, can't we? You can have one glass of wine a day, one donut a day, one something a day that you know isn't good for you, but then again, it's the same thing, but on the opposite direction. So it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's being really kind to yourself, I think, and sitting there and showing yourself some love and some self-care and being like, okay, like if I am in this particular position, okay, let's start with some breath work. Let's just give it a try. Let's just
Mm.
start. Let's just try. Let's just start. I like open that conversation up and give it a go. And I think that's why I love what you're doing so much. And I love the story of kind of how you came to get here. I guess one of my questions for you, obviously, when you kind of left the corporate industry, um, and you went on this journey obviously to Brazil, which sounds amazing to me. Do you know what? Brazil's on my hit list for next year, and I'm
Oh,
yeah, I'm
it's
Rio. So
incredible.
I
It's
can't. Yeah.
incredible.
Um, when you kind of went on this, did you have any moments in your, I guess, in that particular journey that you were on where you were sort of questioning, like, what am I doing? Like, were there any points where it came a bit like, do you know what I mean? Because it is a massive
Yes.
change to step away from this, like, obviously, this life that you've known, like you said, you good corporate job, good money, good position, to then obviously be propelled to a beach in Brazil and be like, did you have any moments of sort of like questioning or self-doubt or like
Yeah.
a bit of imposter syndrome? Like, how did that look for you?
So many times. But I mean, initially there was just a knowing inside me, and I was like, okay. So initially when I left, I was like, no, something has to change.
Yeah,
Can't keep doing this. I've got to put myself first. So that's when I left, and I
I
was like,
love
right,
that.
now what do I do? And I was like, give yourself some time. Don't rush into something.
Yes.
And so that's when I was like, okay, I'll give myself 2 months in Brazil, and that's why I took on a social enterprise project, because I was like, I have to be doing something while I'm there, because I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't just live in Brazil, uh, which I could have, but I needed to be doing something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And like,
That's so interesting, isn't it, that you say that? Because it's almost like, yeah, that guilt feeling, but actually there's no guilt in associated with it. If if you want to go to Brazil for 2 months and sit on a beach, go to Brazil for two. But there is
yeah,
that, it's like that ingrained, maybe that kind of corporate-y kind of work rat race
I've
societal
got to
kind
have a
of like,
purpose. I've got to be doing
yeah, I
something.
can't sit here and do nothing. Like, but actually, if you want to, good. But I think
Yeah.
that, yeah, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, but it was a beautiful project because I was working with social entrepreneurs from the favela communities and helping them. So it was like I felt like I was still giving back
Yeah.
something. But then when I was deciding to make that career change, I was like, oh my God, can I do this? Can I do this? Is all I've ever done is recruitment. That's all I've ever known. Can I do something else? And with coaching, I'd actually started a coaching diploma just after university with the coaching academy, and
Oh,
I never
okay, yeah,
finished it. So
yeah.
coaching had always been in the background.
Okay.
So that's when I came back to coaching. I was like, no, this feels right. And what helped me was trusting my feelings, my gut, like knowing it feels right, your intuition. And for me, I
Mm-hmm.
was just leaning into that a lot more and trusting myself. And then when I found breath work, that went through the roof. Like my intuition was so
Yep.
spot on and I was
Yeah.
so connected. I knew exactly what I meant to be doing. Um, but I never took it seriously as like a job, really.
Yes.
When I started training, I was like, I'm just going to help people to breathe. And I started to do that. And then when I did move back to the UK from Brazil after a year and just start to do breathwork sessions and teach people about breathing, again, I wasn't thinking of it as a business. I was just like, I'm
Mm,
helping people to
I love
learn
that.
something incredible and help them to change their lives. And it was actually only during lockdown that I was like, okay, this COVID is something that's attacking people's respiratory systems.
Yes.
They need access to what I've got.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to take it more seriously. And I started to show up more and do lives. I started to share more content. That's when I created my first online course for people to
Yeah.
have access to. And that's when I was like, okay, this is a business I've got to invest in as
Yeah.
a business. And
Yeah.
that's when I started to yeah, do it more seriously, I guess, because
Yeah.
before it was just like, oh yeah, I'm teaching people how to breathe and changing people's lives. It's amazing.
I love
And
that.
now I'm like just wanting to scale it up and scale it up. So I think I've digressed from your question, but along the
No, it's
way,
absolutely fine because that was a beautiful answer,
experience.
because I think it really highlights how authentic you are and how much love you have to give within it. Because it is where you were saying, oh, like I wasn't really thinking about it. I just wanted to teach people these things that I'd learned, and how much it changed my life, and help them. And you're really coming from that place of like pure love and authenticity. And that's why I love your story so much and what you're doing, because it's so beautifully powerful, but so pure as well. So yeah, no, that was a beautiful answer to the question. Thank you, my darling. I guess my next question for you, I know obviously we've spoken a little bit about this in the past, but I guess I would call myself a bit of a spiritual person, like whatever that. I use the word spiritual, that's kind of personal to me, and I feel like that can be personal to everybody. Would you say, because I know obviously we've spoken about Friday the 13th as well and energy, and before we jumped on we were talking about the moon as well and moon energy, which I love. Would you say that spirituality has a place in your life?
So much so. So much so. But it hasn't always. So
Yeah, same here.
since I found breath work, I have reconnected with my spirituality and my
Mm,
sense of self, because
I love that.
I would definitely call myself, like, saying we're spiritual beings in human
Yeah,
form. I very much believe that we all have a way to connect with spirituality, but it can be in different forms. So, like you just
yes,
said,
yeah,
whatever it means to you, for some
yeah,
people, it's connection to self and higher self. Some
yeah,
people, it's connection to faith and religion. Some people,
yes,
it's connection to Mother Nature, to Earth,
yeah,
whatever it means to you. But for me, I have tapped into my spirituality since I found breath work. That's helped activate that again for me, because for me, when my dad died, because he was quite spiritual
mhm.
and religious and he was very connected. So he would meditate all the time, and
Oh,
he could actually, like, he would sit down to meditate and he'd like almost like go into a trance and like be
I love.
connected to spirit or whatever.
Yeah.
And then when he died, I was like, well, what does that mean? Like, God doesn't exist, faith doesn't exist. I turned
Yeah.
away from it altogether. So I
Yeah.
was like, if he was that spiritual and connected, why did he
Why
die?
did this happen to him? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I turned away from it, and that was part of my trauma response as well.
Mm.
So when I found breathwork, I'm going to share a cool story actually, I will,
Go
because
for it, please.
in the breathwork session I tell you about in Brazil, where I had that massive breakthrough during the seminar, at the end of that session that I'd had the big release, because I connected it to the fire, to my dad's death, to the trauma.
Yeah.
At the end of the session, we have a period of integration where we just allow the session to settle and we're open to receive guidance or whatever
Yeah.
comes through.
Yeah.
And I was actually remembering my dad and remembering fond memories that I hadn't allowed my to for a long time because it was too
Yes.
painful or I
Yeah.
blocked it all out.
No, no, no.
And then all of a sudden, like he was sitting on a park bench and he turns to me and says, "This is the start of your spiritual journey." And I was like, what just happened? And I came around from my session. I said to my facilitator, "Did I fall asleep?"
Yeah.
She was like, "No," because I immediately was dismissing that. I was like, "Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that didn't just
That
happen."
didn't happen. Yeah.
But I connected with my dad and he, gave me that message. And for me, that has just, it literally has been the beginning for me to turn into that a little bit
Mm.
more. So, when I was in Brazil, they are such a spiritual,
Oh, they are.
beautiful place. And it's so spiritual there and so connected. And that's when I had been working with crystals before, but I lent into that. I started working more with angels. I
Yeah.
started to lean into my breath work and meditation practice. And like I said before, it really activated and strengthened my intuition because
Yeah.
even if someone here listening doesn't really believe in angels or, a
Yeah.
higher being or anything like
It's
that, that's
okay.
fine.
Yeah.
But do you believe in yourself and your
Yeah.
intuition? Like we all have that
Yeah.
gut feeling that,
Hmm.
we may not hear it, or if we hear it, we don't listen
We
to it.
don't listen to it.
So we all have that. So for
Yeah.
me, even it's like just strengthen that for me.
Mm.
So I have definitely leaned into my spiritual practice and I do have a daily practice that helps support that now as well. So I'm very much, in answer to your question, do you think of myself as spiritual? And yeah, I like to share
I
as much about that as I can too.
Yeah, I love what you just said then in regards to even if people who are listening aren't spiritual, that's okay as long as you start with a sense of self, of a
Mm,
sense of, yeah, like your gut feeling. And
yeah,
just can we start by believing in ourselves first of all?
yeah.
Like that, I think is just like the most beautiful way to put it to someone who, yeah, who might sit there and be like, no, I'm not. And that's okay. But let's just start with that bit because that's a lovely way of putting it. Then incorporate the breath work into it. No wonder you are changing people's lives everywhere.
I love that. Well, that's how I felt for myself. I was like, I was like, I knew that was going to happen. Why didn't I do this? Or I knew I should have gone that way.
Yes.
Or I knew I should have done that. But we don't trust ourselves. Like, where is that coming from? Like, we
Yeah.
all have that.
Yeah, oh
So just
gosh.
start leaning into that, listening to yourself. And that's self-trust, that's self-belief. And that's starting to activate that spirituality within yourself for yourself. It doesn't have to be anything else. But yeah, just it's a good starting point, right?
Beautiful starting point. So it was such a nice way of putting it. I've never heard anyone put it like that. So thank
Yeah.
you for that because that was really, really nice. So I guess with 2025 fast approaching, obviously you are a businesswoman, you're helping loads of people all over the world. What are your sort of, I guess, like your business plans or your goals for 2025 or things that you would like to achieve?
So
Whatever they might be, business or not business.
yeah, so many things. So I want to keep having a bigger impact with breath work. So I think for me, I have been playing safe, playing small,
Yeah.
and just doing what I need to do. But now I really want to share the power of breath. So for me, I am currently working on a book that I want to put out, which is going to be exciting, to share the power of breath work and my story and my journey with breath, but also, share my 21-day breathwork journey because I think everyone should go through that. Um, and also because I do work with corporates, I'm going to start speaking on bigger stages and do bigger events because I think
Yeah.
that's where I can have a lot of impact. I did an event at the start of this year and it was 650 people. And each one of those people then went back to their branches and shared what I'd
Right.
taught them with them. So I'm like, the positive impact you can have from, that. So speaking on bigger stages, because it's my mission, Sally, to
Yes,
make
and I love
breathwork like a
that.
household practice. I want everyone to have access to this.
Yes.
And I'm also part of the school breathe program where we take breathwork into schools.
I saw this and I
Yeah.
was buzzing off of this. This
Yeah.
made me really happy. And I give you, sorry to butt in. And the reason
Yeah.
being is my daughter, she's 6 and
Yeah.
she does yoga.
Mm.
And she's been doing it for
Yeah.
a good year and a half now. And I found her the other day and she was sat on her bed and I was like, what are you doing? She was like, I'm just breathing. And I was like, and I said, oh, and I didn't want to obviously invade her personal space or anything like that. So I said, oh, like, I know it sounds silly, but how did you learn to do that? She's like, well, I do it through my yoga class. And before now, when she's caught me out, getting obviously more and more tense and da, 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 she'll do breathing techniques with me. And every time she does, I'm just like, this is amazing. Like
Yeah.
this is how I want to see the generations being brought up. Like,
Mm.
so when I saw obviously that you're doing stuff in schools, I was like, I love this. Thank you that there
Yay.
are people in this world like you that are doing that, that indirectly are influencing people like my 6-year-old daughter. And then she's influencing me at home and bringing me down and grounding me down when I'm too far gone. So, yeah, sorry, carry on. But I
Yeah,
just wanted to
no.
say that because it was literally recently she didn't. I was just like, I love this.
Sally, this is confirmation to me from what came through earlier, well, just in the last week, actually, that I need to do more for children
Yeah,
and with kids because I am part of the School Breathe program and I'm going to be doing more with them next year. So we are going to focus on more going into more schools,
yeah,
but also offering more breath work for children. And because they are amazing, like children are so intuitive and
oh
so
my God.
connected.
Yeah,
But I see more and more children getting anxiety from younger ages. Like they're growing up in a very different world to what we did.
yes,
And they have different challenges and different ways, that they can be challenged. So if they can have access to breath work and have these tools from that age, like it's going to be transformative for them.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's going to be a big part of what I do for 2025 as well as working more with children, going into more schools, getting my book out, getting on bigger stages. So yes, watch this space. I
I
want more people to be breathing.
Yes, I am so happy for you. I am so blessed that you would sit down with me today and share your story and just talk to us because I so believe in what you're doing because obviously I use it as a practice myself. And like you, I just want you to, it's like I want to tell everybody because I'm like, you are incredible at what you do. You are such a big person in the business and in the industry and someone to learn from. And obviously, like I said, like your story is real because you've done it. Do you know what I mean? You've lived it and you've now got to this point, and life is very different from what it was, 10, 15 years ago when you were in obviously the corporate industry. And the fact that you've gone full circle and now you're helping those people, all of it to me is just like, just
Oh,
love
Sally, I
you.
adore you. Thank you so much.
No,
Like, you're so kind and
not at all.
appreciate you inviting me on because I am happy to talk about this all day, every day.
I
So,
love that. I love that. I love that. Okay, so one last question. This is my last question, and it's
yes.
something I ask everybody. If there's somebody listening who was you maybe 10 years ago and is feeling stuck and feeling rather lost, maybe that sense of losing themselves, and obviously knowing what you know now, what would be the one tip that you would give them? It's
Oh
such
gosh,
a
what would
big
be the
question.
one
It's always
thing?
like that people stumble on.
Yeah, because I'm already like so many things you could do.
Yeah, I know, right?
But the one thing I would say is first know that it's okay to accept you are where you are. And if you're looking for change, just start listening because we all know the direction we want to be heading in. Even if we don't know what the end goal looks like,
Yeah,
we know what the first step might be. So just listen to that gut feeling, to that
yeah,
intuition, and no, be brave enough to take that first step. And that first step could just be, telling someone out loud, thinking
yes,
about making this change. It doesn't have to be doing it, it can just be saying it out loud. So just lean in, listen to yourself, trust, and be brave to make that first step because, you can absolutely do anything you desire that you put your heart to. Just
yeah.
be kind to yourself, trust yourself, and it'll take the time it takes. If you told me
Mm.
10 years ago I'd be teaching people to breathe for a living, Sally, I would have been laughing at you. What are
Exactly.
you talking about?
And that's so true, isn't it? I think there's quite a few things have happened to me on my spiritual journey, my business journey. People told me I've been doing those things like 5 years ago. I literally would have laughed in their face. I'd be like, you're absolutely ridiculous. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also you may not know what it looks like. Like I said, you may not know the end
No.
goal. When I went to Brazil, I had no idea about breath work. I
Yeah.
just knew I had to be in Brazil. And what I didn't say is when I applied for the social enterprise project, because put down I spoke several languages, they gave offered me the placement in India. And I was
Oh,
like, I could have just accepted that and gone to India, but I was like, no, I have to go to Brazil. And it was through connections in Brazil that I was connected with a breath coach. So I don't know what path I could have ended up on if I'd gone to India. So I trusted myself and
yeah.
I asked what I wanted. So again, it comes back to, you know, my darling, what the next step is.
Oh,
You do.
yeah.
So
You
just
know.
trust that.
Yeah.
Just trust that
Trust.
one little next step.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Thank you, Jessie, so much from the bottom of my
Oh,
heart. You are such a beautiful soul. I love you so much. I remember the first time I met you, I was like, I love this
same.
lady. So thank
Oh,
you, and thank you for sharing that with us at this time of year because there is so much going on for people. I will pop all your links below for people obviously to reach out to you because I know obviously you're on social media, I know you've got your website, so I'll pop all the links below. So if anybody does want to reach out and find out a little bit more, just start asking some questions, then absolutely
yeah.
reach out to Jessie.
Please do. There's a free 5-minute audio you can download from my website as well if you want to have a taster.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, please reach out anytime. Thank you, Sally.
I love you, my darling. Merry Christmas, happy 2025, and we will be chatting very soon. I know we will.
We will.
Thank you, darling. Take care. Bye.
Bye.